Hello, lovely people. Welcome to Ari Talks About Music. I'm Ari, and today I'll be reviewing the new King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard album, Phantom Island. Phantom Island is the 27th album from the Australian rock band King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, who are a band who pretty much for as long as they've been going have kind of built a brand around just releasing albums constantly, with this being their 27th album in only 13 years. And of course, for a band who releases music at such an insane rate, they are bound to explore many different genres. And throughout the years, they have done just that, having explored genres such as psychedelic rock, progressive rock, neo-psychedelia, and even thrash metal. And so, of course, every time they have a new album on the horizon, it's always going to be unpredictable as to which direction they're going to take their sound next. And especially coming off of the year of 2023, which I think was a big year for this band, having released only 2 albums that year, however, the first of which being the absolute thrash metal powerhouse Petrodragonic Apocalypse, which to this day I still stand by is one of, if not their best album. And then following that one up in a completely different direction with the Silver Chord, being a much more electronic and neo-psychedelia leaning release. But despite the 2 albums being so different, they are still tied by the overall narrative and the lore that the band creates. And so the release of Flight B741 last year, I did overall find to be quite an underwhelming album, with there being nothing actually wrong with it, but just for the band's usual standards, there's very little that actually makes it particularly amazing or interesting. And so after having released a much less focused and interesting album, I am definitely quite relieved that Phantom Island is absolutely a return form. Once again, of course, taking their sound into regions that they've never really gone to before, delving much more into symphonic rock with a lot of very big band influences too, which can be seen right away on the title track which opens the album, which gives it such a grand and epic start with all of the orchestral arrangements and just the number of things that are going on this song. And I really do love how that gives it a very classical feel just in the way it's structured. And the various different movements, if you will, on this track are also fantastic, especially towards the end as they start to get much more suspenseful. And going into Dead Stick, this is just an absolutely brilliant and fun track. Once again, with the very symphonic rock kind of feel and this really epic guitar riff that opens the song. I also love the fact that 3 different vocalists are featured on this track, which is not something that they do very often, but I think it really works here, making this song feel so dynamic. Lonely Cosmos then does tone it down a little bit and focuses more on the suspenseful side of the album's sound. And while this track is very good at what it does, I do find that its placement within the album could have been done a lot better, which is a real shame because I think that it is a solid track. However, in comparison to the first 2 tracks, which are just these brilliant, fun, epic symphonic rock anthems, that Lonely Cosmos does just pale in comparison a little bit, and it does feel quite underwhelming coming off of the absolutely brilliant first 2 tracks. Eternal Return feels like a much more spacious track with these very long and slow string arrangements, as well as the very dreamy effects on the vocals, which really help with that too. It does sort of stray away from that sound a little bit during the verses, but still manages to remain so unique for the whole thing. And once again, I think this track just has moments of being so fun, especially just with the guitar playing and the incredible vocals. And Fanpsych, very simply, I think is just a very fun, very well put together song. And I think that this track does a really good job at feeling like a journey of sorts, with there being, once again, various different parts or movements, if you want to call them that. It really does just help every single part of the song feel so unique and really interesting, each in their own way. Space Sick then continues to explore the slightly simpler sound, probably being the closest thing this album has to a stripped back song. But despite this track being so simple sonically, there is still a lot going on, from the fantastic use of the very epic orchestral arrangements once again, and of course the absolutely brilliant guitar playing, which consistently is one of my favourite things on this album and very different to the usual style that we're used to expecting from them. Aerodynamic is definitely one of the most unique songs on this album, making it absolutely a favourite for me. And I love the way it opens with an acoustic guitar, which is an instrument we've yet to really see yet, with this album being much more electric focused, at least in terms of the guitar playing. And it really does manage to make it work, with even the transition into the song being so smooth and completely seamless. And the moment in which the electric guitar does come in on this track is also incredibly well put together, and flows so well into the outro, whereby a lot of the orchestral sounds going on remind me a lot of Beck's Lonesome Tears, which is great to hear. I think that's a very underrated Beck era. Sea of Doubt starts off feeling more like a much more casual jam session than anything, and I think it's a shame that the rest of the track doesn't really build upon that in any way, which I do find it annoying showing how this track did actually have quite a lot of potential, especially opening the way it does. However, it pretty much is just that for 4.5 minutes, which just makes it feel a lot less focused and just kind of tagged in there, and just like it's been kind of shoved into the track list without too much thought being put into it. And especially with how grand, epic, and symphonic a lot of the rest of the album is, it's just weird to have this 4.5 minute jam session just shoved in there. I think overall that there's very little to its structure or its writing. It does make it a much less memorable song to me. Silent Spirit is an absolutely fantastic and very unique song, being one of the more relaxed tracks on the album and incorporating so many elements of soul in there as well. And genuinely, I think that vocals aside, pretty much this whole song could seamlessly fit onto like a Marvin Gaye album or something like that. And even a lot of the guitar moments on this song are brilliant, and the way that it so perfectly manages to balance between the soul parts and the guitar parts is also amazing. And despite them having delved very little or even at all into soul, it's something that they're already doing an amazing job at. Grow Wings and Fly has this really fun and light-hearted intro with the Bye Bye Shanghai, which to be honest is just classic King Gizzard stuff at this point. And I think that the title of this track as well is very fitting, given how it does just make you feel like you're flying with how airy and spacious the whole thing sounds. And of course, it still has the very long and epic orchestral sounds, and I think just ends the album really well, taking a lot of what's great about the entire track list and putting it into one song. But of course, with just how light-hearted and humorous a lot of this track is, they still managed to really give it a lot of that King Gizzard flair. And so I think at this point to call this album unique would just be a bit pointless, because that's pretty much King Gizzard's entire brand at this point, that they reinvent themselves with nearly every album. And it truly is incredible how on pretty much their first proper attempt at doing a more symphonic rock album, they are already killing it. And so many of the elements, whether it be rock or orchestra or even the brief soul track as well, I think that most of this album is absolutely brilliant, and I really look forward to this album continuing to grow on me as I listen to it more. And so I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching this review. Please be sure to listen to this album yourself and tell me your thoughts below. Please leave a like if you liked the video, and please leave a dislike if you didn't like the video, and remember to stay hydrated.